Almost everything you have seen regarding the Vikings, every film, television series, and textbook, is built around a massive void. First-hand, real-time written testimony from someone who actually stood among them and watched them is missing entirely from the European record. This timeline shows exactly why our understanding is so fragmented. The red bar represents the actual Viking Age, while the blue bar shows when the famous Norse sagas were finally recorded. Those texts rely on oral tradition, committed to parchment centuries after the fact. Without written eyewitnesses, we are left with archaeology. Pulling a decaying ship from a dirt trench provides us with profound physical evidence of how these people built and traveled, but the wood and iron are mute. They cannot offer the live testimony of an observer. There is one historical anomaly. In 922 CE, a highly educated, meticulous Muslim diplomat from Baghdad named Ahmad ibn Fadlan successfully embedded himself inside a Norse trading camp and wrote down exactly what he saw. We owe our most vivid, foundational text of Viking culture to an outsider, a government bureaucrat from the Islamic world. To understand how strange this encounter was, look at where Ibn Fadlan started. Abbasid Baghdad in 921 CE was a highly structured, strictly regulated urban metropolis operating at the peak of Islamic civilizational wealth and administration. This map tracks the grueling overland route his diplomatic embassy took. They moved northeast from the familiar territories of the Islamic East, crossing through the Aral Sea region and pushing deep toward the Ural Mountains. By the time they reached the banks of the Volga River, the familiar markers of civilization had vanished entirely. Ibn Fadlan had crossed into a geographic and mental frontier that was utterly alien to his world. Camped on the riverbank were a group of Swedish-Norse traders he called the Rus. Ibn Fadlan described them as being as tall as date palms, armed at all times with axes and swords, and covered from their fingertips to their necks in dark green tattoos. This was a direct collision of two disparate worlds. The administrative brain of an empire spanning 3 continents was suddenly face-to-face with pragmatic, violent men operating at the absolute edge of their commercial reach. Ibn Fadlan viewed the world through the lens of strict Islamic laws regarding purity and cleanliness. When he observed the daily habits of the Norse traders, that worldview hit a wall of brutal pragmatism. He was specifically horrified by their morning hygiene routine. He watched as a slave girl brought a single basin of water to the camp. One Rus trader would wash his hands, face, and hair and spit into the basin. That same unemptied bowl was then passed to the next man, and the next, until the entire camp had used it. For a Muslim diplomat required to perform ablutions using clean running water, this communal basin was repulsive. It represented a stark clash of basic hygiene standards. Their religion was equally pragmatic. Ibn Fadlan noted that upon arriving at the camp, a trader would walk up to rough wooden stakes carved with human faces, leave offerings of food and drink, and explicitly ask the idols to send them buyers with silver coins. The daily rituals of the Rus deeply disturbed him. Yet, standing in the mud of a Russian riverbank, Ibn Fadlan refused to let his religious disgust compromise his duty. He wrote down everything he witnessed with the meticulous precision of a government official filing a report. That commitment to honest observation was tested when a wealthy Rus chieftain died. What followed was a harrowing 10-day funeral preparation that no other writer in history has ever documented. The logistics were grim. The dead chieftain was placed in a temporary grave to hold the body. Meanwhile, a slave woman from his household volunteered to be sacrificed so she could accompany him into the afterlife. The entire 10-day ritual was overseen by a formidable older woman, whom Ibn Fadlan refers to in his notes as the Angel of Death. She was responsible for arranging the proceedings and ultimately executing the sacrifice. On the final day, the scale of the funeral became clear. The chieftain's massive wooden ship was hauled out of the water. His body, dressed in fine garments, was placed inside a tent on the deck, surrounded by his weapons, slaughtered animals, and food. As the sacrifice of the slave woman commenced aboard the ship, the Norsemen standing on the shore began systematically beating their wooden shields with staves. Ibn Fadlan learned they did this to drown out her cries, preventing the other slave girls from being frightened. Finally, the chieftain's closest relative stripped naked and walked backward toward the ship with a torch, setting the massive wood structure alight. Through the smoke and violence, Ibn Fadlan did not look away. He stood his ground and provided history with its only real-time account of a Viking ship cremation. As the ship burned down to ash, Ibn Fadlan stood on the riverbank and had a direct conversation with a Rus trader through an interpreter. The Norseman looked at the horrified diplomat and bluntly criticized the Islamic practice of earth burial. He told him it was foolish to take the people you love and put them in the ground, leaving them to rot and be devoured by worms. The trader then explained his own cosmology. Pointing to the burning ship, he argued that fire was the ultimate sign of respect. By burning the dead to ash in an instant, the flames released their souls to enter paradise immediately. Neither man changed the other's mind. But this theological argument on a muddy riverbank stands as a profoundly human moment in medieval literature. Two men from opposite ends of the earth looking at death and debating exactly what comes next for the soul. Ibn Fadlan's manuscript, known as the Risala, survived but remained largely unread for centuries. It wasn't until 1923 that a complete version was discovered in a library in Mashhad, Iran. Since that discovery, modern archaeological digs have repeatedly validated the bizarre, hyper-specific details of his account. We find the ship mounds, the traded goods, and the burial layouts exactly as he described them. The text eventually breached pop culture, directly inspiring modern media, including Michael Crichton's novel Eaters of the Dead and the Hollywood films that followed it. Our modern understanding of the Vikings rests on the report of an Abbasid diplomat who traveled nearly a year to reach them. His presence on the Volga illustrates a world where Baghdad's administrative and diplomatic reach already extended deep into the forests of the north.